Usually a wild grapevine will... Crab apples. First of all, they're very small. You're gonna have to eat a whole lot of them. These would be the rose hips. You can cook that up and eat it. I get to show you how to take care of a thistle. This week's video is going to be a compilation, foraging wild edibles. Any information that we're sharing in here about anything that might be edible or wild edible, check that out for yourself. So I just share some of the information that I know and some of the things that I do and how I do it. It's definitely not a replacement for professional advice. Wow, a lot of blackberry bushes along here too. Those are wild blackberry or raspberry, I'm not sure what, but they're the wild variety.
What is that?
Oh wow, there's some blackberries back there that are ready to go. This is a young blackberry plant. It has 3 leaves. The 2 come out of the same spot on the stalk, and third one comes out on a little stalk a little bit higher. The stem has thorns, as well as it has this purpley, whitish purpley look, and if you happen to rub on it, that powdery look rubs off, and it's very thorny, and it will have berries, blackberries. This is a wild blackberry plant. No blackberries on this one. All right, coming along, we have a wild grapevine. This is the muscadine grapes growing in a maple tree, and has a good bit of grapes on it. Usually a wild grapevine will grow up a tree much higher and only produce grapes up toward the top. They're usually quite high, but yeah, here they are, and they're not very big, and they're mostly they're good for juice or jelly. They have a good sized seed in the middle, so they're not really great for fresh eating grapes, but yeah. If you like these videos, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe as well. We put out new videos every Friday morning. Here we see a live elderberry plant. No berries on it though. Keep looking. Elderberry has these nodules all over the bark. Very knobby. The leaf of the elderberry Well, there's a whole bunch of leaflets on there. It is a medicinal plant. It is considered medicinal. Some people have problems eating very much of it. Some people make pies out of it, out of the berries. Some people say that you can have too much of it. I've never had a problem with it, but we do mostly use it as a medicinal plant. It's very good for colds and flu, things like that. When I pick these berries, elderberries, they're small. They're about the size of a BB. I don't pick the berries off because the berries are very easy to break, and they'll turn everything purple that they touch. So I take the whole cluster when I pick them, and I just put the whole cluster in there. So I'll take those off whenever we get back and I have access to soap and water. Yeah, on the elderberries, there are some pink ones on here. If they're green or pink, you don't want them. You just want the darkest ones. The very dark ones are what you want, not the lighter ones, not green, not pink. So we just close it up and put it in the backpack and then move on. This plant here, false Solomon seal, it's an edible plant. When the berries are red, these are not red, they look kind of gray or white, so I think I'm going to leave that alone. So the plant we're looking at here is false Solomon seal. False Solomon seal, when the berries are ripe, they are red, and those are edible. Not to be confused with true Solomon seal. Solomon seal is a plant that is poisonous, and all parts of that plant are poisonous. This is the false Solomon seal, and only the red berries are edible. I would show a comparison here, except I did not find any true Solomon seal plants to show for a comparison. So look that up for yourself and get familiar with it before eating any berries from this plant or any plants that look similar. Why am I laying on the ground? I found some plants down here, right here. Plantain is what it's called. That's the leaf. It has some medicinal properties, and it is edible. I think there's a limit to how much of it you can eat, but it is an edible plant. Not too bad. Kind of a bitter taste right now, this time of year. In the springtime, it's much better. Also down here we have dandelion growing. Dandelion is also an edible, and I know this is bitter. When you get to this time of year, they get very bitter. In the springtime, these are very good. Dandelion is, people often notice it by its flower, but if you can learn to identify that leaf, see the jagged edges, the long jagged edges, it usually grows in yards. This was brought over from Europe as a garden plant, and today it runs wild pretty much in most of North America. Dandelion greens are actually very good to eat. They're better in the spring. This late in the year, they are going to be bitter. The whole plant is edible. The root, the leaf, the flower. Also down here in this area is clover. Clover is also edible. There are a couple different kinds of clover. There is sorrel or wood sorrel, which most people would call a clover. It looks very similar to this, and it produces a yellow flower. This type of clover is called Alcite, and it produces a white flower. Other kinds of clover that people may be familiar with is alfalfa, which is used as a hay and planted as a hay product, and it has a purple flower as well. This is the flower of Alcite Clover. White flower. See how close I can get and have focus. Sometimes They have a little bit of pink in them as well. This, if you can see the leaf, see, this is sorrel. This has the heart-shaped leaf. There are 3 heart-shaped leaves. That's sorrel. This is plantain growing here. A lot of people recognize the seed stalk, and this is the leaf. It grows in a sort of rosette type form. Here's another example right there. This is a shagbark hickory tree. Shagbark hickory. Hickory trees grow nuts. Okay, looking on the ground underneath the shagbark hickory tree, there are nuts, and they look like this. Little balls with 4 sections. And see them in different stages here. This one's not opening up. This one is opening up, and this one's all brown and really opening up. And what it is these just kind of come off of the nut. You get enough of these, you can dry them and eat them. You can roast them, or you could probably eat them like this if you can get into them. They're very hard. You'll need a rock or a hammer or the end of your knife. If you have a little pummel on the end of your knife, you can put it on a rock and smash it. Get into the nut that way. Here are the leaves of the hickory tree. A little bit difficult to see. They're starting to dry out, but yeah, that's what the leaf looks like. So the leaf of the hickory, there are 5 leaves. 2 are coming out opposite of each other, right like here at the bottom. And you have 3, 2 coming out at the same point here. The other one has its own little stalk there where it comes out just a little bit from the other, but yeah, that is the leaf of the hickory tree. These tall plants behind me here, these are wild lettuce. Some people call it a giant lettuce, but it is wild lettuce, and it is considered a medicinal plant. Its leaves are very similar to the dandelion. Its stalk is covered with little hairs. If you break the plant, it does seep a milky sap. It has flowers, yellow flowers. The flowers grow out where the stem or the leaf comes out of the stalk. There will be a flower at each place where each leaf comes out. The leaf looks very similar to the dandelion, just more jagged, much larger. The plant itself gets about 8 feet tall. The top of it gets these flowering, lots of flowers at the top, and they turn and have these fuzzy seeds, and they happen everywhere. This one's even taller. This one's maybe 10 feet tall even. They get quite tall. There is a limit to how much you can eat. I'm not sure what that is. You'll need to look up those details more. But it is good for headaches, pain. It is a pain reliever. So this plant here in front of me is stinging nettle. As you can see, the underside of the leaf covered with stings. The stalk itself, hope you can see that there are tons of hair-like stings all over. If you brush those, you'll just be full of stings. This is an edible plant though, if you can deal with the stings. This is the leaf. And the leaves aren't so bad, but the rest of the plant is covered with stings. This is the flowering top. As you can see, hope you can see that on camera. There are stings all over most parts of the stem of this plant. It's just covered. But the leaves are edible, and if you rub the stings off of the leaves and the stalks, those are considered an edible plant. But right here with it, we have another edible plant. It is a legume, and I'll adjust the camera here. It is growing up the stinging nettle and also up the plants beside it. And this is called ground bean. Now I'll just pull a leaf off here to show you a little better. A lot of people would mistake this as being poison ivy, and it's not. I didn't get a very good specimen here. That leaf has been eaten. It's very similarly to poison ivy and most other plants that have 3 leaves. These 2 lower ones are coming out of the same point, and the top one has a little bit of stem before it starts. But if you look at it, if you're familiar with garden plants, this plant looks, to me at least, and to most other people who are familiar with it, it reminds them of green bean. It looks like a green bean plant, except it's much, much smaller. The vines are almost hair-like. They're very thin. I would say 1/16 of an inch or less. You can see it wrapping around this other plant. The ground bean plant is this little vine. It's not this other one. This thicker plant is something else. But the ground bean is this thin plant that wraps itself all around these other plants in order to grow. And the ground bean produces 2 fruits. It produces a bean that looks pretty much like a green bean or a pea pod. And then there is a second fruit that it produces, which is a round bean that is in the ground. It's also referred to as ground nut because of the bean that grows in the ground. And that's the bean that you see more often. When people talk about ground nut or ground bean, what they are often referring to eating is the little bean that it produces underground. If you scrounge around, it's not usually very deep. It's pretty much on the surface or just under the surface. It usually is in fairly loose soil or in the forest floor with the leaf debris and different things barely covering it. So you don't have to dig very far to find the beans. They're often confused with pebbles. They look very similar, and you have to basically wash them before you can really tell the difference between the ground nut and a pebble. They do produce a aerial bean or seed pod above ground, similar to the green bean, how green beans would produce. And it's a very small bean, but you could collect and eat those as well. Those are edible. The trouble with collecting those is typically wildlife eats them before you really see them. So a lot of people don't even know that there is a bean that is produced above ground as well on the plant. Okay, the above ground pod on the ground bean, I found some here. As you can see, it's more like a pea. Some people would refer to it as a pea or a green bean, but it has 3 little seeds inside of it, and that little thing is edible. But like I say, usually, first of all, they're very small. I mean, to eat that, you're going to have to eat a whole lot of them to really fill you up. They're very small, and typically the wildlife will get these before you do. And there's another one. So yeah, this is wild rose. They get these little berries that grow behind the flower. These would be the rose hips. Just like if you buy rose hips in a gourmet grocery store, these are the wild version, same thing. This is the mayapple plant. They call it a mayapple because they actually get a little fruit on the underside. There's none there right now, they're just starting. This is early May. So eventually the mayapple plant gets this little, almost looks like a little apple, I guess, little fruit thing. When the fruit is ripe, they can be eaten. However, there's deer and all kinds of other things that like to get to them as well. People say that they're poisonous until the fruit is ripe.
Come here.
Looks like a cherry tree, a young cherry tree, and it's spread out really well. It's got a lot of wild cherries. Yeah, that cherry tree spread out pretty well. It's a small one. It's got a lot of little wild cherries on it. Usually, cherry tree gets very tall and very straight, and the cherries are way up high and they're hard to get. This one's on the edge of the forest. There's a little clearing here, and then we're getting back into forested area. There's another cherry tree growing back there, a little small one, not very tall, and full of cherries. All these lovely crab apples ready to go. I have tasted them. They are a little tart. Crab apples are tart. They're not as sweet as apples that you get in the store and that are grown on farms. They are a wild apple and they are tart, but these ones here aren't horrible. They're actually pretty good. So I would encourage you, taste your crab apples before you pick them and decide to do something with them. But yeah, you can harvest the crab apples. You can always add sugar to them, whatever kind of sugar you like. Well, I'm back with reinforcements, and we have a 3.5 gallon bucket that we are going to fill with crab apples. All right, one bucket full. Take it back and start processing these things. So I'm having a little rest here under a pine tree. Pine needles have a lot of vitamin C. You can break them and suck on them, or you can boil them and make a tea, pine needle tea. They're sweet. They're not super sweet, so if you're used to things that are really sweet, they might not taste sweet to you, but it tastes pretty sweet to me. I don't usually use that much sugar, so. The milkweed plant growing right there. So milkweed gets these pods on them, and when those pods are young, they're edible. But when they are young like this, you can feel, you can even eat the shoots, but you can feel where it, right there is where it gets soft. So that there, you can cook that up and eat it about like asparagus. Or you can get the pods when they're young and boil them. You want to get them before they're great big. When they're great big, I guess you can still eat them, but they're better when they're smaller. Seeing a lot of violets along here too. You can tell by the purple flower. Violets are also an edible plant. The flowers are edible. I believe the leaves are as well. I've eaten them. So there's a lot of plants that look like wild garlic. Wild garlic smells like garlic, so if you see it and it doesn't smell like garlic, don't eat it. Clover is also edible, so we can put some of this in there. All right, there's a thistle. So I get to show you how to take care of a thistle, how to eat it. So best, in my opinion, best to just leave it standing. Take a knife, get the leaves off.
Papa, will I get more leaves?
Nope, because we're going to eat it. Get the leaves off of it. Then you end up with just the stalk standing. And the top here is all thistly. You just take that off, and then you scrape this other stuff off while it's still standing. There you go. Clean it up a little better, and you can eat that. All right, we've got another thistle right here. Take the leaves off. Take that top off of there. Scrape it. Give it a little push. There we go. Well, that's pretty much it for this one. Hope you liked the video. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends and hit that like button if you haven't done so already. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We put out new videos every week, every Friday morning. And if you'd like to receive notifications when we do upload the next video, hit that notification bell. And check out our channel. We have several videos just like this one or very similar. We do various things including hiking, biking, boating, fishing, builds of various kinds, mostly outdoor activities. Some homesteading is thrown in there as well. This channel is for the experience. We do these things for the experience of doing them and to show others how you can do it too. We try to be fun and entertaining while being educational all at the same time. Sometimes these experiences are done for the first time, and other times they're things that we do all the time. Sometimes we do things just for the fun of doing it. Thank you. We'll see you on the next one.